So it's 4 o'clock now. Welcome everyone to our UpClose Talk live Q&A section with Sergei Nakariakov. And let's welcome Sergei into this Zoom now. Hello, Sergei.
Hello.
So a very warm welcome here. So everyone, maybe you can say hi to Sergei as well. So we have
Hello, everybody.
friends, musicians, trumpeters, I believe, who joined this section today. And so right now, Sergei is in his quarantine, and today is his 19th day. Is that right? So you
Something
are
like this,
going
yes.
out very, very soon. And thank you very much for doing the Zoom section with us last week, in which you talk about the Carnival of Venice. You talk about some like trumpet techniques and answer many questions. So in case if any one of you missed the section, you can always find it on our Facebook and YouTube channel, and you can watch everything again. And today we have a very special occasion that we have Sergei here with us live. So you can ask him any burning questions about the instruments, about his quarantine, about himself, about music making, anything that you can think of. So without further ado, so let me pass the time to you. So as I explained, you can just press the raise hand button if you have any questions.
It's good to see everyone. So
Yeah,
thank you
finally.
for this, for organizing this event.
Yeah, we are very happy. So actually, this is our first time doing this kind of Q&A section.
I see.
And we are very excited about how you guys are going to interact, and we see some maybe many interesting questions as well. So maybe I can ask the first question first, while you guys are thinking. I just got some more questions after we've done the talk last week. So one of the question is that why trumpet is included in the standard orchestra but not the flugelhorn?
Flickerhorn for many years was, and I think was considered as a jazz instrument, and still is, I would say, by majority of players. And my jazz colleagues most of the time use this instrument as a trumpet replacement for ballads, because it has such a warm sound. But flugelhorn can do so much more, especially if you play a 4-piston flugelhorn with extended low range. So my father wrote many arrangements and created almost from zero a whole new repertoire for this instrument. So there is a lot of choice now, and in a way flugelhorn has even more potential than trumpet because of the bigger range. So for those curious, I invite you to try this instrument, and try not to consider it as a trumpet replacement, but rather a whole different thing with a different voice. But of course it will require separate practicing. It's not a copy of trumpet, or it requires a different approach, sound-wise.
Yeah,
So
and
that's my
remember
answer.
last week you talked about the differences between these two instruments too?
Well, it has a different voice. I probably didn't answer about the orchestra part. Well, I think in the orchestra repertoire there is almost nothing. Again, because of the fact that probably the composers didn't consider flugelhorn as one of the mainstream instruments. But it is used a lot in brass bands for this special sound. Not in symphony orchestras, not really.
Let's see. So are there some questions from you guys? Yes, so Christopher,
Hello?
can you unmute yourself?
That's okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes,
I can hear you. Hello.
Sergei, thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for coming to Hong Kong and enjoying this quarantine. I just had a question. I mean, over the years, I've loved hearing your recordings of the Haydn and Hummel and Aratunian, and then of course all of the arrangements, transcriptions of Rococo variations, the Sanson, introduction Allegro. Just had a question about how do you choose what kind of pieces to transcribe for the trumpet or the flugelhorn? What kind of pieces are you looking for? Do you sometimes hear something on violin or cello and think, oh, that would go nicely for trumpet? Or how do you find these kinds of pieces and consider them suitable for trumpet or flugelhorn?
Well, back then it was my father's role, because all those pieces, the arrangements that I've recorded a long time ago, these are my father's arrangements. So he was listening to lots of music and he was thinking what's possible to play. And then there are different factors. Of course, if in the original score there are too many double stops, intervals, chords, or not enough breaks, then to arrange such a piece would require lots of changes, and then it would eventually destroy the music. So then it's better not to do it. And lately I'm searching myself. I just listen to lots and lots of different music, concertos, chamber music repertoire, and then of course I have to like the piece, and if the piece really inspires me, then I start to think whether it's possible to play or not. Because in most of cases it's better not to arrange. I would never say that it's possible to play everything, of course not. Most important is not to destroy the music, and if there is too much sacrifice, then what's the point? I'd rather be a listener. For example, one of my favorite composers is Alexander Scriabin, and with his absolutely magic piano works. But I think almost nothing would be possible to play on trumpet. Or Chopin, for example. Well, that's how it is. So I'd rather be a listener. But on the other hand, just to finish my answer, I've listened recently to oboe, clarinet, and flute sonatas by Poulenc, and I think some of it might be possible to play with flugelhorn, like a cello version of those works.
So maybe you are going to play that one day.
Maybe. I'll have to practice and see how it sounds, how it feels, how it works.
Okay, thank you. So we got another question from Feng Jiaheng. So can you unmute yourself?
Oh, Sergey, thank you. Just wondering, I think the four-valve flugelhorn really extended the range, so you can play all the cello piece like very nicely. And do you ever think of ask the factory to do a four-valve trumpet for you? Then you can do all the violin pieces with the bigger range.
During the collaboration with Antoine Courtois, they've built a prototype for me, but and I still have it at home. But somehow it didn't convince me, because
for trumpet,
yes, for trumpet. I have a 4-piston trumpet. Somehow it did affect the main trumpet range not in a good way. Some other makers tried to do the same. I've tried a 4-piston trumpet, I think that Bench made for Lou Soloff. Maybe you heard of this amazing trumpet player who passed away, unfortunately. And now I know that Stomvi, they produce all set of 4-piston instruments. And Francisco Pacho Flores, my dear colleague, he beautifully plays those. So 4-piston trumpets and cornets now from Stomvi exist. And I think in general, to have a 4-piston instrument is a wonderful idea. And one just has to try and see what kind of music, one can play with it.
Thank you.
So yeah.
Yes, from Shan. So can you start, Shan?
Hello, Sergey.
Hello, Shan.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
Yeah, I just want to ask, you have mentioned about that Timothy dog shit a lot, like before, even on your recordings. Is there any advice that he gave you that's changed your trumpet playing?
I didn't really have any lesson with him, ever. I played with him when I was 10. I played for him, I auditioned for him. Back then, really, I was too young, and probably my father would remember what he told me. Back then, my father wanted me to take lessons from him, but for different reasons, it wasn't possible. Well, one of the reasons is that we lived in a different city in Russia, and but I learned a lot through listening to his recordings. So, by listening to his music, to his music making, to his approach, to the sound, I learned a lot. And he has inspired me as well as so many other trumpet players, of course. He is probably the greatest romantic on trumpet, I would say.
Okay, one more question. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, because on your last video, you mentioned about your study in Paris. So what's the biggest change when you study in Paris and especially with G2? Do they have like a teaching system? Because I heard about the Conservatoire de Paris. They have the Zavoni, Arban, Facon, all these legends. They have left the legacy of the master groups.
Well, for me, the biggest impact on me during these 2 years with Guy Tovron was listening to his playing during lessons, listening to his live sound, because he has such a warm and dark sound, which I like so much. As for the system of teaching, I think that's a flaw of most establishments in the world, is that there are simply too many students. And finally, what often happens is that the teacher comes to work, and then there are many students sitting, let's say, in circle or around the room, and then there is only so much time for each player, and everyone plays a piece. Maybe the teacher gives a few comments, but then there isn't really time for further work more in depth. So there, I'd say private lessons, of course, have a lot more potential, I think. At least this is how I see. And I think it's with almost every teacher is the same. Only with having a small number of students, the teacher can really get out the best from each player. This is how I think. Otherwise it becomes a factory, and then basically the student is left on his own to figure out his small and big issues, whatever the issues are. So the quantity and quality doesn't go well together. So there I say that for me the biggest impact was listening to the sound of Guy, and of course he spoke about music, which was very important. But let's say, how to practice, that I learned from my father, for example.
Right, thank you.
And then one more thing. I don't think one should consider that there is a school of trumpet, let's say French or German or American, so to say. There are certain sound traditions, maybe. But if you think about it, in France there are so many trumpet teachers. If you think that they all teach the same way, of course not. So there I say there is a school of each teacher. Then yes, then I would agree. And for a young student, if somebody, let's say, is going to choose a teacher, well, it's not a country that one needs to choose, but a particular teacher who inspires you in particular. So that's my opinion.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sean. So we have one more question from Louis Ip.
Hello, Sergey. I'm
Hello.
Louis from APA. Hello.
Hello.
So I know that there is AR is making trumpet for you, and also
Yes.
quite a bit of the factory that they make trumpet and ask you to have a test, have a try. So when you are getting an instrument or you are getting your instrument to a repairman for tuning or other purposes, I want to know that how do you communicate with them? Like what kind of language or terms? The language that's in English. I mean, what would you say about the instrument that you want? The response, yeah.
Oh, well, if I say level from the instrument, it's very difficult. And I think the maker can really choose. I have to choose. I have a certain image of sound in my mind. And I would like to feel something particular when I play, some certain resistance, a certain comfort when I move from one note to another, and nobody else can choose for me. So I have to try every particular instrument and see which one feels comfortable. It's like to find a comfortable pair of shoes. Nobody can choose for you. The same with mouthpieces.
Yep,
And then there is the combination of a mouthpiece and trumpet. It's a never-ending story, really.
Yeah.
But at some point, of course, it's better if you stop somewhere and find something that works and just understand that your set-up trumpeted mouthpiece will not play for you. After all, it has to be you who has to play.
Yeah. So, what I wanted really actually sorry. when they,
if I understood your question correctly.
Yeah, when they say that they can adjust the instrument for you, so how do you explain the certain amount of the resistance, anything, or the color of the trumpet, the harmonics? How do you explain to them? How do you tell them? Yeah.
Well, no, I could say I want a lighter instrument. Let's say I want more precise feeling of slots on every note, or less. It depends how you want. Then there is this aspect of how much air you spend. And then there is the aspect how fast you get tired, how comfortable you feel in different range, in the upper range, in the lower range, what's the intonation, the quickness of the speed of response, color of sound. There are so many different aspects. So it has to be an overall comfortable feeling which corresponds as much as possible to what you imagine in your mind. Because as I'm repeating all the time, the sound is not born in the trumpet nor in our lips or lungs. The sound, first of all, is in our mind, the image of sound. How we want to sound, we should know. And then we should try to project this through the trumpet to make it sound as we imagine. And then if, let's say, if you're getting tired too soon, then okay, then you already know that you need a lighter instrument. And then the maker, if it's an experienced maker, should know how to achieve this lighter feeling. So the volume of sound as well, that's another aspect. There are so many players, as we all know, who like to play high and loud, right? And but it's not necessarily needed in most musical situations. What's needed is to be able to express yourself in music. So if there is a good communication with the maker, and if the maker is experienced, then one should be able to finally come to something which is comfortable.
Okay, thank you. And then one more question from Vincent Im.
Hello. Hello, Sergei. Thank you so much
Hello.
for being. I'm a undergraduate trumpet player, and I've heard tons of your recording and a lot of your albums on different platforms, and just hearing you playing the Paganini like violin solo is just so mind blowing every time. And yeah, it's just so like I know that you play a lot of really technically difficult pieces, and it's so mind blowing that I can you try to describe how is it for you to like what is the mentality in the preparation process or like the performing process in playing such like difficult pieces, other than technically we just of course we have to practice a lot and practice effectively, but what is the mental state or the um, kind of imagination you have in being able to control or maintain the endurance or to execute in such a perfect style and like yeah.
I think you pretty much already answered your own question. One has to practice to be patient. I have to be focused. I have to know what I want to say musically. So playing music is like telling a story, this abstract emotional story, or unemotional. Well, it depends on how you want to tell your story. You need to know what you want to say. Like when you're talking, you don't just pronounce random words. You are controlling your speech. So the same should be in music. You should know what you want to say, and then with enough practicing, you should be able to express yourself quite close to how you want to say it. So this is my approach. And of course, for that one needs to control the instrument as much as possible. So for that one needs a lot of patience, practicing, slow practicing. Most of the time when I practice, this is below concert speed tempo. So kind of in between tempo or slow. Because first we need to learn how to walk, and only then we try how to run. But it's the same with any instrument. I'm not saying anything new here.
Thank you so much.
So that's my answer. Thank you.
So any more questions?
Hi again, Sergei. So I just had a question that hopefully can help me as a trumpet player and some of the students as well. So you know, some days I pick up the trumpet, it feels great. Some days I pick up the trumpet, it feels pretty bad. So I've got two questions for you. First question, do you ever have days where it feels not so good? And second question, what do you do if you have such a day as that?
I have bad days all the time. So when I don't feel at my best, and most of my concerts were played with this feeling when I say to myself during warm-up, I will have to fight, because I think it was Vladimir Horowitz, the great one of the greatest pianists of all time, who said that it's so rare that on a concert day, that particular day at this particular hour, you would be in your most perfect, ideal condition. It almost never happens. So it's important to know how to focus and how to control your embouchure and all your system on a bad day. So first of all, it's pure focus. You need to realize where it feels uncomfortable. Then we have to be as efficient as possible. So basically, okay, we realize we don't have much energy today, so we should try not to spend our strength. So build up your dynamic based rather on piano than forte. So it's important to learn how to be expressive without imposing a big sound necessarily. And if you feel good, even better, then you can have a huge dynamic difference, even better then. But then if you always play kind of mezzo forte-ish all the time, then it's just boring. And mouthpiece off the lips as often as possible, to let the blood circulation flow. And of course we have to be warmed up really, really well. So then try to avoid too much playing before the performance. Now I'm talking about concerts because, well, that's my bread. But if it's a practice day and you feel terrible, well, maybe you can allow yourself just to warm up and then skip the day. Let your embouchure rest. I say it's always better not to practice enough than too much, because on different trumpet forums on internet I saw so many sad stories when somebody over practiced and destroyed the embouchure for good, and then people lost their dreams, and it's really sad. So it's not about how much you practice, but what you are able to achieve during your practice session. To do small steps up every day, that is important. That you should have a goal each time you practice, and even if it's a bad day, you can still do something little maybe. But well, if it's not your concert day and you really feel terrible, okay, just skip one day and don't feel too guilty about it. That's how I would do. It doesn't happen very often with me that I skip a day of practicing, but sometimes it does. 2 days is not needed, unless you really killed your embouchure, maybe you need. But if you're careful enough, then 1 day of rest is fine, really.
Thank you.
Thank you. And one more question from Gahan.
Hello. A contrasting question, but that actually always caught my attention. Would you mind share a little bit about the movie you did in Japan, like the single drop of like the water in the mighty river?
Yes. That story was a very interesting moment in my life, because I'm not an actor at all. I never had any acting training or no skills. What happened is that there was a novel by one Japanese author, and then they decided to make a film based on that book. And then in the story, they needed a Russian actor who could play trumpet, but they couldn't find one.
So the novel is actually writing. It's really writing for a trumpet player.
Well, apparently yes. I haven't read the novel. It's in Japanese.
I know.
I can't really speak Japanese. I can just imitate Japanese, and I had a few weeks training to speak those dialogues without really 100% understanding what I was saying. So I learned it as sounds, and I spoke quite a lot in that film. So it was a lot of memorizing, and. After some search, the movie company, the director of the film, he and the producer also, they came to one of my concerts and then watched me a little bit from distance how I interact with people, and then they decided to give it a chance, and I started to. Of course, I immediately agreed. For me, it was fun to try something new. And I started to learn with a coach. I had a coach who himself is a comedian, and still now we are friends. And I started to memorize, and then there was the first trial when I was saying some dialogue. And this trial I totally failed because I got really scared, nervous, like never before in my life, probably. And then somehow this coach of mine, he was able to convince the director to give me one more chance. And then for the second trial, I was already prepared completely. And then they started the shooting of this film, and the whole crew and the actors, we went to Russia as well, because there was several scenes shot in Moscow. And of course, I was happy to work with great Japanese actors and to be in this whole new world, to participate in something new for me. It was a great experience. I don't think it's the greatest film of all times, of course not, but I think it's cute.
Thank you.
Just a follow-up question. So how long did you do, like, I mean, for the whole filming process?
I think the whole filming took maybe 3 weeks, and there was I don't remember how many weeks I had for memorizing everything, but they gave me time. So I don't know, maybe the whole thing took about 3 months in total.
Because I was wondering, because you're so busy performing in different places, so
I see. Well, that was more than 20 years ago. I had back then I had more time.
I see. I saw one hand raising. So Elaine here, would you like to ask a question?
Hello.
Yeah, hello. As we all know that you have been a trumpet star since you are very young. So my question is, and you just say you're practicing every day and play your trumpet every day. So my question is, how would you keep your passion in playing or practicing trumpet over so many years? And especially during the past years, our music industry is going through quite a difficult moment, as we cannot have much concerts and traveling around to perform. So how would you keep yourself want to play and practicing every day and keep your passion in playing trumpet? And
I see.
the question is, anything else you would like to further achieve in your music career in the future?
I see. Okay. I think these two questions are kind of linked for me in one. I still enjoy playing music because I love music. It's a very simple answer, and music is limitless. There is so much of it to discover that there is not enough of a well, even a lifetime is not enough to discover even a small fraction of it. So I never get bored, and then there is so much music, for example, that I don't play myself, but I like to listen to, like jazz, for example. I get a lot of inspiration from listening to my jazz colleagues, also different instruments. And as we grow older, we have more to say in our music. So let's say if I pick a trumpet concerto by Haydn, I would play it today completely different from when I was 15, for example. So I'm not bored, no. So in music I find inspiration all the time. And in the future I just would like to be able to continue to follow this path, and I'm looking forward to discovering more and more music, and hopefully I will enrich my repertoire. And for me it's always a big happiness to meet my colleagues, musicians, and I don't mean only trumpet players, but musicians playing other instruments as well. I love to go to concerts. Nowadays, of course, it's almost impossible. Although there are only very few countries which let it happen, like in Russia, for example. And so for me, I'm never bored. I love music, so it's a part of my life. There is so much inspiration one can get from this limitless world. Yeah, so this is my answer.
So thank you, and so we only have 20 minutes left. So anyone who wants to ask questions, please grab your chance. Oh yes, from Lee Chapman.
Hello, I'm Chapman from Hong Kong Baptist University, and I'm like other musician or music student. I'm exploring music, try to listen to different kind of music. So I was just curious that what have you found and inspired when you are exploring music? I mean not in the aspect of practicing trumpet, but music itself.
I'm not sure if I heard your question properly. Could you repeat your question, because the sound quality is not very good?
I want to ask, what have you found or inspired when you are exploring music, different kind of music? What makes you feeling, wow, it's so cool, or yeah?
The music, well, it really depends on your taste. It's that you listen to something and it makes you feel something, or it doesn't. And this is very individual. So I may like a certain composer and you may not. Maybe you would consider it boring, or maybe you would like something that I would not like. Well, the music makes you experience strong emotions, strong feelings. So this is what it is. It enriches your life. And then it really depends what you like.
It's just smiling.
And Christopher,
yeah,
I think,
Christopher
wanted to ask something.
Oh, yes, sorry. Me again. Sorry, I don't mean to dominate things, but I just had a question about, you're always traveling to different continents, long haul flights, practicing in hotel rooms and things like that. And now, of course, you find yourself in this 3-week quarantine. I just wanted to ask, how do you keep up these extraordinarily high levels? How do you stay in shape? I mean, one thing I think we can relate to a little bit with you in Hong Kong, we have these small homes, unless you're super rich, of course, we have to try and practice the trumpet in a small space. Do you have any advice on that? Do you ever use a silent mute for that purpose, or how do you keep up these incredible sort of levels of practice and preparation?
Well, I guess I'm quite a lucky person because where I live in France, I have a separate house, so I don't disturb neighbors. I could even practice at night, which, by the way, sometimes I do. Because, let's say, during the whole day, I'm like, I'm not really in the mood to play. And then at the end of the day, because I'm rather a night person, I say to myself, okay, nobody will disturb me now. Okay, maybe it's a good time to practice. So it happens to me sometimes to practice at midnight. But the thing is, since I don't practice very long time, usually it's too short for my neighbors to get angry, I guess. And then the same thing in the hotels, I practice without mute. Well, of course, it depends on the isolation. Well, of course, in a hotel, I would not practice too early, well, especially, but neither too late. And of course, I do not practice loud in hotels because I don't think it's important. Again, it's about efficiency. So for my colleagues who live in small apartments and who have issues with neighbors, I don't even know what to recommend. Especially during confinement, many musicians were facing these impossible situations, and probably some of my colleagues used practice mutes. I never use that. When I need to play much softer, sometimes I would put in a harmon mute, which dampens the sound, of course, but then it changes the location of each note, so one has to understand that. So that kind of practicing would be just for, well, keeping your embouchure in shape, but it's not really fit for precision work. So one has to understand that. So if to consider this like a temporary solution, well, it's better than nothing, I suppose. It's a serious matter. So, of course, it's a big advantage to have a space where one can practice freely. Maybe one can come to some sort of agreement with neighbors that one can choose the hours of the day when it's okay to play. And I think this is probably the best compromise, I'll say. And then it depends on the country. For example, when I come visit my parents in Israel, they live in a big building, apartment building. But the thing is that Israelis are so noisy in general that more sound from one particular apartment wouldn't bother them that much. So it depends. Depends on the place.
Yes, from Gani.
Yes, thank you. And sorry, I keep asking questions. I'm just wondering, when you were young, I think you already achieved a very high level of playing, and you got a lot of musical ideas. But you still go to school. Did you ever get teachers or in master class people telling you that you don't play like this, like something like this, and then how would you face that if you already have a strong ideas of how you want the music could be? I mean, how would you face the situation like this?
If I'm criticized by a teacher?
Yeah, or somebody that you're going to learn from, or anybody that.
Well, my music path was not a very typical one, because okay, the very first steps I was taking lessons from one professional trumpet player who played in the Gorky Philharmonic Orchestra. Gorky is the city that I come from. Nowadays it's called differently, Nizhny Novgorod. The city has changed the name. But the thing is that at home I would practice every day with my father. And it's from my father that I learned the most during the first years. So I was not arguing with my trumpet teacher. I was just listening to his playing, which was very important to me. Because I could hear how the trumpet should sound, because my father is not a trumpet player. My father was a piano teacher. And then I took lessons from another trumpet player who was actually another former student of Timofey Dokshitzer, because the first teacher was also a former student of Timofey Dokshitzer. That second trumpet player made me discover lots of trumpet literature that I didn't know before, many recordings from the West, because, well, one has to consider that I lived in Soviet Union, where it was very difficult to get access to information from abroad back then. But again, all these years, it was under my father's supervision. So if I had some ideas, well, first of all, I started to have my own ideas quite, well, I wouldn't say late, but let's say later than pianists of my age. I mean, pianists who perform, that is, because, well, Russia is famous for absolutely amazing string players and pianists. One can name Evgeny Kissin, Maxim Vengerov, Vadim Repin, all those names. And so back then I was just listening to what my father was telling, and I was trying to play what he was asking from me. And of course, when I grew older, when I was maybe around 17, 18 years old, I started to argue with him, and we had many fights over the interpretation. So it was a very explosive combination, because being a parent and a teacher at the same time, it's very tricky. And in many families where a professional musician is teaching the child, many times it just doesn't work, because there are too much fights. But somehow, in spite of all the fights with my father, we kept good relationship. And still, when I visit my parents, when I practice, my father gives me good advices. And sometimes I don't agree with him, then, well, we agree to disagree. This is how it is. It took years, and I guess for my father, I will always be his son and a teenager. This is how it is.
So one question from Natalie Lam, and then followed by Margaret Yang.
Yeah, hi, Sergei. I'm Natalie. I want to ask an opposite question from Fengze. It's like, what do you do if you have no idea about the music? For example, like I can't tell how much I dislike hidden control, but you have to do it. You have no idea about it. That said, maybe I know how to phrase it, but it is like some kind of music that is not in my vibes. It's not my personality. I feel restricted versus some kind of pieces that I like a lot, like from your inspiration, the tuning control, just contrasting. Yeah, so what do you do for the music that you have basically, maybe you don't have that occasion, some kind you have no idea about the music, what you can treat it like to make it sounds like more interesting, because the audience know you don't like the piece.
Okay, there, let's see. If you need to play Haydn concerto for your performance on stage, this is one thing. But if you have to play Haydn concerto for some sort of audition, this is another thing. Because in many orchestras, when you have to pass the audition to get into some orchestra, they expect from your Haydn orchestral sound, which means that actually you should not play like that when you perform that piece on stage with the orchestra as a soloist, but the orchestra wants your orchestral sound qualities from Haydn, which is a little bit strange to me, but this is how often it functions for some reason. So you need to know what is expected from you. If the whole music thing, if the music aspect is just for performing and you just don't know how to approach it musically, try to listen to other pieces by Haydn. His cello concertos, his piano concerto, for example, just to get to know his language. And then maybe you will get an idea how to interpret. And again, if it's for an audition, let's say to a German orchestra, something particular is expected from you, a particular way of playing. If it's an American orchestra or French, some different thing will be expected from you. So you need to know what is expected from you then. Because,
so it's like
sorry to say, but you will have to bend to certain traditions and to certain rules in that case. At least this is how I understand how it functions in many places.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, you would have to play maybe not the way you really want to play, but how you need to play. Yeah. That's the reality.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the next question from Margaret.
Well,
Hello,
thank
Margaret.
you. Hi, Sergei, and
Good to see
everybody. Yes. Obviously, I have non-technical questions for you. The first one is, if you were not a classical trumpeter, and you can start from the beginning, you know, same father, same environment, and you can choose an instrument for you to become a professional musician, what would it be?
I think I would have chosen the same path.
Same instrument. Why?
I think I was quite lucky to find an instrument through which I can express myself. Because I really love piano, but that's why I don't play it. Because even with trying my best, I would never become a professional pianist. It's just not in me. So, but I'm a very grateful listener. So I never had an ambition to become a conductor, for example. Either I love cello sound or violin, but I don't think I would have enough patience to play so many hours of scales. Apparently that's needed. So I feel quite comfortable with trumpet and Flickerhorn. And I think that having played 3 years of piano before gave me a very good basis of this basic of music knowledge. So when I picked up trumpet, I only had one line to read instead of two, so it wasn't an issue anymore at all. And of course, in our family, there was always music around me, because my elder sister is a pianist, and when I was a kid, and she was practicing already the adult repertoire. Was Beethoven, Liszt, Rachmaninoff, Scriabin, all those composers, and it got under my skin. So
Yes.
I guess I had to try music at least. And
Yes,
then,
I heard from
stayed.
I heard from your answers before and this one that actually you mentioned a lot of non-trumpet players, you know, like Horowitz and like Maxim Vangerov, you know. So I presume you listen to a lot of different types of music, and you know, apart from the Japanese movie acting, you like doing a lot of new things. Do you think it's important for musicians' growth to actually have a really wide repertoire outside of your own instrument, and you know, and for music lovers to sort of not like one particular thing, but you know, a variety of things? Because that, you know, a lot of people might say that is not very focused, and you might get distracted, and it might not be the most efficient or the best way to get into something. So I want to hear your comments on that.
I think as long as you spend enough time with your instrument to be able to control your instrument, then the rest is just discovering as much music as possible, no matter which instrument. The more you know, the better. It's important to widen your horizon. And then, of course, there is the question of liking or not liking. During different periods of my life, let's say at some point I was listening more to operas. Now I listen to a lot of piano music. Of course, I listen to my colleagues as well. I'm always very much interested in what happens in our trumpet world. Symphony music sometimes, of course. I listen to a lot of jazz and different directions of jazz. It's all so interesting for me.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So I think it's about time now. Any burning question? Maybe we can have the last question.
I would like to thank everyone for joining. Anyway, it was a pleasure answering your questions. I hope I was able to answer them. And of course, I would like to wish everyone to stay safe and healthy. Nowadays, it's very important. Today, I'm almost at the end of my confinement in the hotel. I made another test today. And yeah, this is how life is these days. So I'm really looking forward to see people, not only on the screen, and I'm looking forward to playing as well. This is why I'm here in Hong Kong.
Yeah, we are looking forward to you coming out from the hotel finally. So if we don't have any questions, maybe you can still email us if you have any questions afterwards. Maybe we can do something about that later when Sergei is out. But for today, so thank you everyone for participating. And we had a very interesting section talking about techniques, instruments, about music, and yeah, basically everything. So we look forward to seeing you, Sergei, in person really soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, and hope to see you all in our concerts, in the coming concerts. So the recital is on 30th of April and also 4th of May. So you can check our website, our Facebook and Instagram for more information. And we only have very limited tickets now. So I hope you will get the ticket to see Sergei playing in person, like live concert for you. And so take care, Sergei, and we will see you very soon. And thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.